Sorry guys, but the S24 Ultra has made this iPhone 15 Pro Max feel lame in comparison. Hear me out, I'm a huge fan of Apple, and I think because of that, I do tend to be a little bit harsh. Though, when it came to the iPhone this year, despite it being the biggest year for the iPhone since the iPhone X released in 2017, with a new button, new build materials, a 5x telephoto camera, and USB-C, it still leaves me wanting more. I switched to the iPhone 15 Pro Max when it was released, and it was honestly kind of a toss-up between this and the Pixel 8 Pro, but ultimately I chose the iPhone because of the performance. Don't get me wrong, I love the Pixel, but the Tensor just isn't it yet. However, since the S24 Ultras came out, it's been the only device with my SIM, and I haven't even looked back once. Today, we're gonna find out whether I made the right choice by switching to the S24 Ultra, or if I regret it, and I'm debating on going back to the 15 Pro Max. Before we get into it though, a like and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. We're very close to 30,000 subscribers, so I just want to say thank you so much for your support. It really does mean a lot. When it comes to these two giants, I want to start off with the displays. Chances are, if you're buying an Ultra or Pro Max device, you really care about your screen real estate and resolution. And when it comes to the iPhone, we have a beautiful 6.7-inch display that supports 120Hz refresh rate, HDR10, and reaches 2000 nits outdoors. It's covered in Apple's ceramic shield glass, but I would slap a screen protector on it because micro scratches are prone to happening on the iPhone. One thing I like about this display is that it's rounded and allows for the phone to fit much more easily in your hand. However, when it comes to watching content, because of the dynamic island, you don't really feel like you're getting as much real estate when compared to other devices. Now, with the S24 Ultra, we get a 6.8-inch display, HDR10 Plus support, 120Hz refresh rate, and a whopping 2600 nit peak brightness. Because of the true rectangular aspect ratio of this display, content fills the screen better and allows you to get much more absorbed into the content that you're watching or the games that you're playing. It's also a little bit sharper at 505 ppi versus the 460 ppi of the iPhone, but realistically, at this size, that resolution isn't going to make much of a difference on either of these phones. I'm actually in the full HD Plus setting on the S24 Ultra, so I don't take advantage of that extra resolution. Though in terms of usability, the drawback to having this monstrous display is that it makes the phone feel much larger in the hand, and it creates some pretty sharp points around the corners, something I would highly recommend a case for, as it gets quite uncomfortable in holding the device for longer periods when it's naked. It's no surprise here that Samsung has been inspired by Apple when it comes to the material choice, since both of these devices are rocking titanium chassis. I know that's kind of a joke, because when it comes to the iPhone, it's not the first to include titanium, but I would say that Apple has definitely popularized the use of that material. Both are fantastic, however, the benefit from the titanium is really only visible on the iPhone, where it is using grade 5 versus grade 2 titanium. This year, the iPhone dropped its weight by about 10%, making this huge slab phone feel more compact and light, which is especially nice as an everyday carry, weighing in at only 221 grams. The S24 Ultra, on the other hand, shed only 2 grams from the Armor aluminum covered S23 Ultra, bringing its weight down to 232 grams. Now, this doesn't make a huge or even noticeable difference. I mean, 10 grams is nothing, but when it comes to how large the S24 Ultra feels compared to the iPhone, I think it's safe to say that, although an illusion, the Samsung does seem like more of a chore to carry around. That and the fact that these really sharp edges tend to get stuck in my pants quite a bit. In terms of design though, I will give it to both Samsung and Apple for keeping a consistent look and identity across their product lineups. The iPhone does look similar to predecessors, as does the S24 Ultra, though I don't think that it's a bad thing, as this does allow them to spend more time on the internal components, which is something that actually matters. I will say, I personally do like the look of the S24 Ultra more. I think the camera housing, or lack thereof, is actually quite sleek, and my lenses look really nice and bold with these Spigen lens protectors on. It gives the violet more of a nice contrast. Though, both of these devices have a really special trick up their sleeves. The iPhone 15 series introduced the Action button, something that Samsung has actually dropped in the form of the Bixby button. The Action button basically allows you to reconfigure the button located on the left side of the device and change the action between a few preset apps or a handful of shortcuts you can use with the Shortcuts app. I will say I actually really grew to like the action button after previously hating on it. It's really nice in the winter time because it just allows you to use the camera shutter without having to wear gloves. And like I said this before in previous videos, it's really nice to be able to use as a light switch for the flashlight, because when I let my dog out at night, sometimes it can be quite hard to see where my shoes are and stuff like that. Though the S24 Ultra has the S Pen, and whether you love it or hate it, it's actually really useful. Whether you need to sign your signature on a PDF, write out some quick notes without even unlocking the phone, or use it as a remote shutter, there's a lot that this little thing can do, and depending on who you are, you may find it much more useful than a remappable button. This actually came in clutch when I was in the process of buying my car, because all of the PDF documents that I was sent over, I was able to sign over this phone without having to go to the computer, use Adobe Acrobat, and honestly, like, it was just easy. I know you can do that on the iPhone with your finger, but having a pen makes tasks like that way easier. Powering the S24 Ultra is One UI 6.0, based off of Android 14, and I won't lie, I love it. They've actually really cleaned it up this year, all the way from the system apps to the control center, and have added the flexibility of customizing certain elements from the device that used to be in the Good Lock app. I think that One UI is starting to feel much more complete, and I said this in my last video, but it's quickly becoming my favorite Android skin. New to the S24 Ultra though is some AI features like text calling, some photo editing prompts, AI wallpapers, though my favorite has to be what's called Circle to Search. All you need to do is press and hold on the navigation bar and select something that you want to reverse image search. Do this on a car to find out what it's called, a logo that you can't quite remember, a dog if you want to know what breed it is. There's literally so much that you can use this for, and I do find it incredibly useful. Now, when it comes to the iPhone, I feel like all I can say is that it runs iOS. And for most people, that's probably a good thing and what you're looking for. But for others, it's probably not enough and is quite limiting. It works with your MacBook, your Vision Pro, your Apple TV, and it does it incredibly seamlessly. And for most people, that's all you need to hear. Convenience is very important. And if that's what's making you switch or hold on to your iPhone, make the choice that is beneficial to you. That's why I've honestly struggled making the switch to Android a handful of times, because truthfully, here in North America, iMessage and FaceTime are just a necessity at this point. It's very hard to get my friends and relatives to switch over to using WhatsApp just so they can send me high quality images. And thankfully, iOS will be adding RCS support in the near future to be able to communicate with Android devices better. But as for right now, it's still kind of a pain in the ass, and it just sucks. However, for me, there's a few things the iPhone cannot do, like place apps or widgets anywhere on the home screen. There's no AI features, there's no side loading, which is actually beneficial and isn't just used to pirate apps. Like, there are apps that I can download, that I can side load onto the S24 Ultra that allow me to watch YouTube videos in my car using Android Auto. There is no way to do that on the iPhone with CarPlay. Not that I would drive and watch YouTube videos, because that's kind of fucking stupid, but it is pretty nice if you want to just eat a quick lunch and watch YouTube video while you're sitting in the driveway. But most importantly with the iPhone, there's no fun. There's very simple customization, but I feel like Apple wants this phone to look and feel like how an iPhone should in their minds, so that it's easily recognizable to the public. I feel like this phone for 1,750 Canadian dollars is simply a marketing tool or like a status symbol. And before people comment on the stability, I've had no app crashes, no slowdowns, nothing of that sort on the S24 Ultra. This has been one of the most reliable out-of-the-box phone experiences that I have had, period. So no, Android just isn't hot garbage. In fact, when it comes to stability, I've had far more problems on the 15 Pro Max. Let's talk about the cameras though, because there is quite a bit that I want to say. I think this year Samsung has made a pretty sizable leap in video. They look amazing, and now you have the ability to shoot in 4K at 120 frames per second, which makes B-roll super smooth and flexible to edit. Though I think when it comes to video, the iPhone wins hands down, especially if you're willing to put the extra work in by shooting in ProRes log and grading it yourself. But for most people, to be honest, I think that you'll be happy with the experience on either of these devices. However, if you do tend to shoot in a lower lit environment, the Samsung doesn't even come close to the iPhone. As even with the computational computing this time around, it seems like their noise reduction game just isn't anywhere close to this thing. And when it comes to the S24 Ultra, due to the removal of the 10 times lens, when it comes to video, Samsung actually switches between all of these lenses much more seamlessly than the iPhone, so it is kind of a toss-up. Truthfully, both of them are great, and you're really only going to notice a difference if you're pixel peeping or paying attention to things that most people don't see or care about. When it comes to still photography though, it's a completely different story. The S24 Ultra has a handful of lenses, a 200 megapixel wide, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto, a periscopic 50 megapixel 5x telephoto lens. In terms of versatility, Samsung is definitely up there, considering that it allows you to digitally zoom up to 100 times. Though, when you're ever gonna wanna seriously use this is beyond me. The iPhone does have a pretty respectable camera lineup though, a 48 megapixel wide, a 12 megapixel 5x telephoto, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. However, the iPhone cannot shoot at 8K when it comes to video, or 4K 120 frames per second. But when it comes to picture quality, I'll throw up a few stills and comparisons so you can actually be the judge of which one you prefer. Something that I've noticed is that the iPhone does a better job with the 5x telephoto. It performs better in lower light, has pretty great edge detection, and the bokeh created by it looks natural. It also retains more detail in the shadows and does a great job at making the scene look natural or as shot. Personally, I feel like the S24 Ultra's cameras this year are a sidestep rather than an upgrade compared to the S23 Ultra. The 5x isn't as good as the iPhones in my opinion, and I truly do think that the 15 Pro Max lands more shots, but there are times where it does get beat out by the S24 Ultra. However, where it gets weird is that the 10 times digital zoom shots on the S24 Ultra look far better than the iPhones. I think that the computational photography inside of the Samsung is doing a lot of work here, but it does kind of feel like I'm using the 10 times camera. However, it is highly dependent on the environment that you're shooting in. With great lighting, it looks amazing, but if the sun is setting or you're in a space that's quite dim, it does fall apart quite quickly. When it comes to the main wide lens though, while both create great images with nice contrast, I do prefer Samsung's as it's a little bit more punchy and vibrant, though you may not want that. There's definitely a Samsung look, but I kind of mess with it, and I think that it creates a nice ready-to-share image. Though again, the biggest issue with the S24 Ultra's cameras is in the low light performance, and I really cannot stress that enough. In my basement apartment, almost everything that I try to shoot is covered with nasty grain or looks like the image has some sort of vignette, whereas the iPhone looks a lot cleaner and overall just lets way more light into the sensor. That's why realistically, I think both of these camera systems have their heavy pros and cons. Though I will give it to Samsung for fixing the shutter lag, bringing it on par with the iPhone in terms of capture speed and reliability. Okay, this is the part of the segment where I want to talk about some things that are important to me as a user and things that are heavily going to sway my decision on which one I actually choose to keep. Call quality, battery life, speakers, and so on are very important to me. And I don't know what it is, but the last couple of revisions of the iPhone have been an absolute miss for me when it comes to cellular reception. And when it comes to the 15 Pro Max, it's no different. Being in a basement apartment, I would understand the shoddy service on the 15 Pro Max. But when I'm getting nearly a full signal on the S24 Ultra, it just doesn't make sense to me. I should not be seeing 1 to 2 bars on the iPhone. I think this also makes a direct impact on the quality of my calls because a lot of the time I have trouble hearing people on the 15 Pro Max. I'm not sure if whether that's the speaker grill, the service, or what, but people tend to clip more and it almost sounds like the earpiece is rattling or is getting distorted. Whereas on the Samsung, it's clear as day and I'm able to hear people loudly with no issue at all. I also listen to music in the shower, and for that I would always use the 15 Pro Max because the speakers are incredible. They are literally the best that I've heard in a phone, period. They sound that good. They're full, they're rich, have great bass, and overall just make everything you're listening to sound way better than a mid-range Bluetooth speaker. Okay, maybe mid-range is throwing it a little bit, but it sounds pretty good. Though Samsung's actually come quite a long way with the speakers. Now, it's not going to be anywhere near as good as the 15 Pro Max, but I can safely say that I would recommend using this for music. It's loud, it's clear, it's definitely not as full, but you're definitely going to get a good sound out of this phone. And honestly, it's a lot better than what we've seen in recent years with Samsung. And lastly, probably the biggest thing for me right now is the battery life. Now, the S24 Ultra is brand new, so keep that in mind. But the iPhone started off strong, and lately it's felt like something's off or just not quite right. I would probably go to the Apple Store and get this problem resolved if I wasn't using this device as a trade-in, but I used to get 2 days out of this thing, and now if I use it, I have to charge it before I go to bed. Not the biggest deal in the world, but definitely a huge downgrade from the out-of-box experience that I got when I switched to this phone. When it comes to the S24 Ultra though, I kid you not, I haven't even charged this phone at home. The 10 to 20 minutes in my car has been enough to keep it sustained, and because of the 45-watt charging, it tops up much quicker. This isn't necessarily a direct comparison toward the endurance of either of these when it comes to battery life. However, I will say flat out in my experience, the S24 Ultra is outshining the 15 Pro Max, and I think that this year, this is a first for me when it comes to, you know, the Samsung phones versus the iPhones. And okay, I probably just gave it away there a little bit, but I did get the email today from T-Assurant, which is the company that handles the trade-ins on behalf of Samsung, and this phone is going back after this video. When it comes to these two devices, I've honestly just had a far better experience with the S24 Ultra. I find that I'm actually using my phone more, and I know that's probably not a good thing. You know, you want to, get off your phone as much as possible, but when you're paying like $2,000 Canadian for these devices, they have to benefit you in some way. And what I get out of an iPhone, I can get out of just a regular iPhone SE or the iPhone mini. There's nothing that this phone gives me that's any more special that I really care about. However, when it comes to the S24 Ultra, the experience is just bar none. I've also been loving the Android experience with Android Auto versus Apple CarPlay. I think that could be a pretty cool video in the future, but I will say just as it stands, Android Auto has had less issues for me, is less buggy, and overall has been a way better experience than CarPlay. Anyways, let me know what you think about the S24 Ultra or the 15 Pro Max, and whether you'd be going for the S24 Ultra or this phone right here, whether you're gonna hold off, not upgrade, whatever, or if you're just watching this video for the first time, hearing about these devices, comment which one sounds more appealing to you. Anyways, that's been it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to like and sub. Peace out.